When you dial 911, you're usually in the middle of the worst moment of your life. For dispatchers, it's just another shift until it's not. These calls start with desperation and end with something far more chilling. Tonight, we're diving into 5 of the most disturbing 911 calls ever made, each with a backstory that'll haunt you long after the video ends. Number 5. The Silent Screams, Lauren Giddings Case. Lauren Giddings was 27 years old. Smart, driven, and full of life. She had just graduated from Mercer Law School in Macon, Georgia, and was studying for the bar exam. Friends described her as warm, kind, and full of positive energy. It was June 26, 2011. Lauren's friends and family noticed something strange. She wasn't answering texts. Her social media, silent. No one had seen or heard from her in days. Her car was still parked outside her apartment, and her lights were on. But Lauren was gone. Friends filed a missing person report. Police began their search. And then the smell hit. Officers traced a foul odor to a trash can just outside the apartment building. Inside, they made a horrifying discovery. A human torso. No limbs, no head, just a torso wrapped in plastic. As detectives combed through evidence and interviewed residents, one person stood out. Not because he was suspicious, but because he seemed helpful, calm, cooperative. His name was Stephen McDaniel, Lauren's neighbor. Stephen had gone to law school with Lauren. In fact, they had classes together. To everyone, he seemed quiet, nerdy, maybe a little awkward, but harmless. He even gave interviews to local news, expressing concern for Lauren's disappearance. As investigators dug deeper, they discovered something chilling. In Stephen's apartment, they found packaging materials that matched the plastic Lauren's torso was wrapped in. A hacksaw, blood, even a pair of her underwear. But the most disturbing discovery? A written plan. A detailed document describing how he intended to break into Lauren's apartment, murder her, and dispose of her body. Stephen had been watching Lauren for months. He stalked her, peeped through her windows, and on June 26, 2011, he acted on his sick fantasy. According to his own confession, Stephen waited until the early morning hours. He used a master key, one he had stolen, to enter Lauren's apartment while she slept. He stood over her bed, watching her for minutes. Then he attacked. Lauren fought back. She screamed. She struggled. But Stephen overpowered her, strangling her to death. He then returned to his apartment, dismembered her body in his bathtub, and placed her remains in trash bags. He left the torso in the garbage can just feet away from where she lived. For days, he stayed in the building knowing exactly where Lauren was while her family and friends searched desperately for her. Stephen was arrested shortly after the evidence mounted. He was charged with murder, and in 2014, he pleaded guilty to killing Lauren Giddings. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole. Number 4. There's a monster outside the Purnell case. It was a quiet summer night in 1997 in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, a town where nothing much happened, a place where everyone knew each other and doors were still left unlocked. But just past midnight, a 911 dispatcher received a call. The voice on the line was barely audible. A little girl on the phone saying, "There's a monster outside. Can you come?" The dispatcher tried to get more information, but the little girl on the phone, later identified as Erica Purnell, whispered only fragments. No screaming, no crying, just a calm, eerie tone, like she knew she had to stay quiet or something would hear her. By the time police arrived at the Purnell home, everything appeared normal. Front door, locked. Windows, secure. No signs of forced entry. Officers knocked, but no one answered. Eventually, a neighbor with a spare key let them inside. What they found was nothing. No signs of a struggle. No parents. No child. The Purnell family had vanished. Police launched a search. The entire block was canvassed. Dogs brought in. Helicopters overhead. It wasn't until sunrise that a chilling discovery was made. Just 2 blocks away, in the wooded lot behind an abandoned church, they found a small pink sneaker. It was Erica's. Erica Purnell was only 5, a shy kid who loved drawing. dressing up like a princess, and feeding the neighbor's cat. Her parents, Thomas and Danielle Parnell, were described as quiet, reclusive. Danielle was a schoolteacher. Thomas worked overnight security at a lumber mill. No enemies, no trouble, or so it seemed. The investigation took a twisted turn when police uncovered an unreported break-in that had occurred 2 weeks prior. Someone had tried to enter the Parnell home through the basement window. It was brushed off as a prank, but now it was evidence. Police pulled surveillance from a nearby gas station. The footage showed a man loitering around 2 a.m., matching a description given by a jogger who'd seen someone lurking in the dark that week. That man was later identified as Mitchell Reeve, a drifter, no known address, a rap sheet a mile long, and a disturbing obsession with Danielle Parnell. He had met her once briefly at a parent-teacher conference. That was all it took. He followed her home. For weeks, neighbors reported seeing someone sitting in a parked car late at night near the Parnells' driveway. No one called it in. When police raided Mitchell Reeve's storage unit just outside of town, they found what nightmares are made of. Photos of the Parnell family taken through their windows, a crudely drawn map of their house, and worst of all, an audio tape, a recording of the 911 call. He had recorded it from outside the house. Erica wasn't imagining the monster. He was real, and he was standing right outside her window watching her, listening. He claimed he only meant to see Danielle, said he brought rope just in case. He broke in through the basement, crept through the house. When he reached the child's bedroom, Erica was awake. She whispered into the phone, frozen in fear. He panicked. He said he didn't mean to hurt her, but that wasn't what the coroner's report showed. All 3 family members were found buried in a shallow grave in the woods. Erica had bruises consistent with restraint. Thomas had defensive wounds. Danielle had been alive when she was buried. Mitchell Reeve was sentenced to death in 1999. He never showed remorse. Number 3. The confession, the Ed Kemper tape. In 1973, police in California received a call from a man who claimed he had killed his mother and her best friend. He sounded calm, composed, even polite. What they didn't realize at first was that the man on the phone was Ed Kemper, the 6'9", 280-pound serial killer who had been slaughtering young women across the state. And what came next was his confession. Ed Kemper didn't just kill. He hunted, he planned, he perfected. And when the time came to stop, he walked into a phone booth, dialed the cops, and spilled everything. But why? During his taped confession, Kemper speaks softly. No rage, no remorse, just detail after horrifying detail. It's like listening to a man explain how to change a tire, except the subject is decapitation. I just couldn't handle it anymore, he tells detectives. I had to tell somebody. When I see a pretty girl walking down the street, I think 2 things. One part of me wants to take her out, talk to her, be real nice, and the other part of me wonders what her head would look like on a stick. Disturbing, but that's what made Ed Kemper so terrifying. He wasn't a raving lunatic. He was intelligent, charming, and he knew it. Between 1972 and 1973, Kemper murdered 6 young women. Hitchhikers, college students, all strangers. He picked them up in his car, often luring them in with a smile and a smooth voice. Once they were inside, they never got out. He later murdered his own mother, the woman he blamed for the darkness inside him. He smashed her skull in while she slept, cut off her head, and did things far too grotesque to repeat here. In that interview room, he said, I cut her head off, and then I humiliated her, and then I sat there for a while and talked to her. Why confess so openly? Because Ed Kemper wanted to be understood. He wanted people to hear, to know what he did, and in a sick way to be remembered. Kemper played a critical role in the early days of FBI's behavioral science unit. Agents interviewed him at length to understand how killers think, how they select victims, how they justify their actions, how they hide in plain sight. He's still alive, still incarcerated, still talking, and now spends his days reading audiobooks for the blind in a California prison. Number 2. Help Me, the Lisa Montgomery Call. December 16, 2004. A cold Thursday in Skidmore, Missouri. A quiet town. The kind of place where everybody knows your name, and your business. That morning, 23-year-old Bobby Jo Stinnett was at home, 8 months pregnant. She bred rat terriers and had arranged to meet a woman she'd been chatting with online about buying a puppy. The woman's name? Darlene Fisher. But Darlene didn't exist. The woman who arrived at Bobby Jo's home that day was Lisa Montgomery, a 36-year-old from Kansas. And she wasn't there for puppies. What happened next is almost unspeakable. Montgomery attacked Bobby Jo, strangled her until she was unconscious, then used a kitchen knife to cut the unborn baby from her womb. Bobby Jo awoke during the attack and tried to fight back, but it was too late. She died in her own home alone. Montgomery then fled with the baby, who miraculously survived. But how did authorities track her down so quickly? That's where the 911 call comes in. It wasn't Lisa who made the call. It was Bobby Jo's mother, just hours after the murder. She was supposed to meet her daughter, but when she arrived, what she saw made her scream. The dispatcher tried to stay calm, but there was panic in their voice too. A missing newborn, a fresh crime scene, a killer still at large. Time was running out. Authorities put out an Amber Alert, unusual since the child had never been seen by anyone but the mother. They weren't even sure what the baby looked like, but they had one clue: the online chats between Darlene Fisher and Bobby Jo. Investigators traced the IP address straight to Lisa Montgomery. The next day, December 17th, police knocked on Montgomery's door in Melbourne, Kansas. She greeted them with a smile, rocking a baby in her arms. She told them she'd given birth the day before, but investigators knew better. They quickly took the baby into protective custody and arrested Lisa. DNA confirmed the horrifying truth. The baby was Bobby Jo's. Who was Lisa Montgomery? She was a woman with a tragic past. Abused as a child, neglected, and violated in ways we can't fully describe here. She had lost custody of her own children. Her life was unraveling. In a twisted attempt to hold on to her new husband and family, she faked being pregnant for months. When the time came to deliver her baby, she knew she had to find one. She found Bobby Jo. Lisa's trial began in 2007. Her defense argued mental illness, severe trauma, pseudocyesis, a condition where a woman believes she's pregnant. But the jury didn't buy it. She was found guilty of federal kidnapping resulting in death, and sentenced to death. For over a decade, Lisa sat on death row. Legal appeals, protests, petitions. Some believed she was too mentally ill to execute. But in January 2021, just days before the presidential transition, Lisa Montgomery became the first woman executed by the U.S. federal government in nearly 70 years. Her last words were not recorded. Number 1. I just shot everyone. The Tyler Hadley case. On the surface, Tyler Hadley was like any other suburban teenager. He lived in a quiet Florida neighborhood with his parents, Blake and Mary Jo Hadley. Strict, sure, but loving. His father, a watchful protector. His mother, a kind, attentive soul. Tyler, however, had begun to spiral. Drugs, depression, violence simmering under the surface. He'd been arrested once for a fight and was known to dabble in ecstasy and hallucinogens. Friends said his behavior had become unpredictable. It was July 16, 2011. Earlier that day, Tyler posted a cryptic message on Facebook. Party at my crib tonight, maybe. Nothing unusual for a Saturday night. But behind that message, behind that maybe, something horrific had already taken place. That afternoon, Tyler had walked into the bedroom where his mother was working at the computer. He stood behind her clutching a hammer. Then he struck, again and again. When his father rushed in, Tyler turned the weapon on him too. Both were bludgeoned to death in cold blood. Their bodies were dragged to the master bedroom, hidden under towels, clothes, books, anything Tyler could find. He even placed a stuffed parrot on top, a grotesque attempt to cover what he'd done. And then he cleaned himself up and invited the town over. That night, nearly 60 teenagers flooded into the Hadley home. They drank, they smoked, they danced completely unaware that just down the hall lay the bodies of Tyler's murdered parents, wrapped in towels and buried under household debris. But someone did know. Tyler's best friend, Michael Mandel, was pulled aside during the party. Tyler led him to the garage and whispered something that would never leave Michael's mind. "I killed my parents." At first, Michael didn't believe him. Who would? But Tyler insisted. He showed him a bloody footprint, talked about hiding the bodies, the hammer, the locked door. Michael still couldn't believe it, but he took a selfie with Tyler just in case. Piece of evidence. Insurance. Michael stayed calm, played it cool, and then he left. The next morning, he did what any real friend would do. He called Crime Stoppers. When police arrived at the Hadley house, Tyler tried to put on an act, but the smell of death was overwhelming. The house was a mess. Bloodstains, smeared walls, and eventually that locked bedroom. Inside, officers found the bodies of Blake and Mary Jo Hadley, just as Tyler had described. The hammer still lying between them. Tyler Hadley was arrested on the spot. He confessed to everything. He told police he had been planning the murders for 3 weeks, that he even took 3 ecstasy pills beforehand to work up the nerve. But the why still haunts people. He said it was because he didn't want his parents to stop him from partying. He wanted freedom. He wanted to be remembered. Tyler was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. No deals, no mercy. In court, relatives wept. Former friends stared blankly. The selfie with Michael became a symbol of how calm and calculated Tyler truly was just hours after killing the 2 people who loved him the most. Behind every 911 call is a story, sometimes heroic, sometimes tragic, and sometimes unspeakable. These calls remind us that reality can be darker than any fiction. If you found this video compelling, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And let us know in the comments, should we cover more real 911 calls? Until next time, stay aware and